I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
Lee, you've obviously been around the club, managers, players, the whole institution for over 13 years now, which is an incredible kind of run that you've been through, especially with all the success that's gone on.
And the changing of managers.
Just a handful of them.
Why have they not rubbed you for luck or something? You seemingly have a
It goes the other way. It goes the other way. Some might
No, so we want to bring in a lot of these stories, right? And because It's not just, we're used to covering Chelsea in the now, and there's so much rich history here to kind of talk to you about. So between the Champions League and just a general look back, that's kind of what we want to do here. We want to set the stage.
No problem.
We want to make sure that we cover off on some of the juiciest bits that we can.
I smell a lawsuit.
Great. Well, kicking it off right away. The exciting time for us right now is that Frank is back at the Bridge, is a manager. His second season only managing in general. Obviously, his first in the Premier League and his first at Chelsea.
No pressure, obviously.
He's delivering.
Absolutely.
What's something that caught you off guard about his approach to management? You saw him as a player. Is there a different style and approach to him as a manager?
You know what? It's a very good question. I mean, from taking it, as you rightly said at the start, Nick, I mean, it's 13 years now since I started as a producer for Chelsea TV. And I remember my first trip to Cobham, my word, walking through the doors and just watching those guys train. John Terry, Frank Lampard, Petr Cech, Michael Ballack, Didier Drogba, Ashley Cole, Joe Cole. And I was like, wow. But one of the first things that hit you at the time was just the fastidiousness of the way that Frank approached training as a player. You would watch them go through like a 90-minute, 2-hour session. And then Frank would come straight back out with a bag of balls and be practicing free kicks. Pre-season, he would always work a little bit extra. He'd always come in a day earlier. He'd always work a bit harder. And you saw that from the get-go. And you see that now as well. He doesn't expect the players to do anything that he wouldn't do. He works hard. He puts the effort in. But when he walks through the door, there's that immediate respect. There's that gravitas. There's that, because people know exactly what he's achieved. He earns respect, but he also gives it as well. Just to watch him around the place, he knows everybody in the building. He knows their name. He knows their role. He knows what they do. And that's priceless. And just the interactions he has, not just with the players, but with the coaching staff and everybody. You can just see that attention to detail is phenomenal. And it looks like that's, obviously paying off. It's early doors, of course, but you see, the results are evident on the pitch already.
Well, one of the things that, I think we've seen, and the way he's covered too, right, is I think he's given maybe the benefit of the doubt, not only because of who he was as a player, which is obviously a legend, but because he seems to present the media and yourself included in that with honest kind of opinions or takes. And he seems to always, he's not playing mind games like Mourinho would have, maybe in the first spell or second spell. It just seems to be kind of spoken plainly and honestly. Do you get that sense from him as you're kind of talking to him that it's not, hey, I'm not here to set up 5 chess pieces in a row in the media for the next 5 weeks, but I'm here to talk honestly?
I think you're spot on. I think absolutely spot on. Honesty, objectivity as well. And you always feel like you're learning something when you sit down with him, because he'll give you an honest, educated answer, because he can draw on so much experience. But he's also, keen to know. He stresses that, I am learning, I am developing. He bounces things off of Jody and Joe and Chris Jones, and they all work such a tight-knit team, and that comes across as well. And everyone around the place just gets that feeling from them as well. That, hey, you know what? Everyone pulls in. Everyone's got a job to do. Everyone's got a role to play, and he's the first to acknowledge that as well. And at the start of the season, he had all the players and coaching staff and everybody in a room. And I don't think I'm sort of speaking out of turn here. And he basically said, we are all in this together. When we win together. If we lose, and we will lose, yes, we'll look back on those things, but we will learn from it and we'll pick ourselves up. And straight away, that does wonders for everybody. It really sort of galvanizes everybody. And you go into work, chest pumped out, looking forward to going in. And it's a fantastic environment to work in, I have to say.
Yeah, another thing that's changed a lot this season is the makeup of the squad indexes to such a younger player, a player that's grown up through Chelsea, and you've probably had a chance to see them grow up from being, young kids into now being adults who are playing for the first team. And so how has that changed things from your perspective, how you approach your job? Because you now have a much longer term relationship with some of the players who you're speaking to on a regular basis.
It's a very good point. I mean, you think about people like Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham, Fikayo Tomori, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who's just, I mean, the stories and the development that you see are just incredible. And they're like with Ruben, for example, the first sort of interactions we had with him, it's like 14, 15 years old. And I remember Adi Vivash, who was in charge of the under 21s, I believe it was at the time, sort of picked him out very early and said, we see something very special in him, and the academy are very invested in him and his development. And then to bring Frank in, that transition from what they call sort of one side of the road to the other is now evident. And now players, staff, families can sort of see that there's now there is like a roadmap, and you can see it was with Andreas Christensen a couple of years ago. It's like, wow, okay. And now it gives these kids something to aim for. And we did an end of season barbecue for the academy a couple of years ago with Ruben. And it was brilliant because you had all the families from the under eights all the way up through to the youth team. And now all of a sudden they're looking at this guy who's now proving himself for the first team. Think, okay, right, now we can see that there is a window of opportunity. There is a pathway. And Frank has certainly accelerated that for a number of players. And it's reaping its rewards as well. And, as fans, you can obviously empathize with that as well. You can sense it when you're at home games, just the desire from the fans for these boys to do well and to progress. It's fantastic. And these are kids that have grown up with that DNA of the club. People like Mason and Fikayo and, the list goes on, doesn't it? But they've seen it from, it makes me feel old, but since they came in at the age of 8 years old, it's phenomenal. And all credit to them, and all credit to the academy as well, because they put in such an incredible amount of hard work behind the scenes. People see that these players are coming through, but there's so much that goes on that Neil Bath, Jim Fraser and the coaching staff do behind the scenes with these kids. So many of them come through and people speak about how well they present themselves in the media. Well, that comes from those guys because they give them media training. There's lots of extracurricular stuff that they provide to these boys coming through and developing in order to create impressive, not just footballers, but impressive young men as well. And I think that's a fantastic approach.
Are you able to do more with them because they already are settled and comfortable with you? Are they more willing to do maybe extended media type things versus your traditional sit down, be really scared in front of the camera and knock out some questions?
It's a good point, I think. I think you might have seen from some of the films that have been produced this year, we've done some of the Pride films and we've brought people in to help us with that as well. But people like Ruben and people like Mason have given so much time to these projects because they know what we're doing. They know that we're there to support them. And I always say that to them when we do, even now, when we do sort of first contract interviews with 17-year-old lads, it's important to stress, I think, that, hey, we're here for you. We want to help you as much as you can help us in creating content. We want to help you develop as well, because you get some players that will come through and, as you were alluding to there, can be sort of, I guess, quite nervous when, the lights, the camera starts rolling. So it's up to us. It's our responsibility to help that development, I think. And certain players have just taken to it like a duck to water. Ruben's always been a fantastic talker. Mason as well. No, but it's true. He's great, and you get a real, sound very paternal now, but you see him sort of play against Villa for the first time in over a year, and you're thinking, you're just willing them on to, just to do something, to come through it unscathed, and you become very attached.
No, absolutely. And I only smirked at Ruben because we got the pleasure to sit down with him, and he's a brilliant chat. It was so great to talk to him.
Very humble, isn't he?
Oh yeah. For someone that's achieved so much.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it right away.
Yeah.
Okay, Lee, since you're around these guys so much, is there one player who off camera has a bright, vibrant personality, but we just haven't quite seen it on the social medias and the interviews with Chelsea yet? Or is there one that we're still waiting to come through?
Oh, that's a good question.
feel like Christian and Reese are quietly in the background in the videos, but when they're with the boys, they're probably a lot more out there.
I think Christian Pulisic's a good example. I think he's such a polite guy, such a humble, grounded, polite guy. So there's an element of that. You could say maybe he's a little shyer than some, but he's such a kind-hearted guy. And when you speak to him, he's such a gent. He's my son's favourite player because I was lucky. I took my little boy to the training ground one day, and they just treated him like royalty. And it was a humbling experience, but it was such a privilege to see all the players come through and high-five him. Frank coming over, putting his arm around him. And then at the end of training, Christian came over and he said, "Oh, hi little man, how are you?" Shook his hand, got a football out, and they started playing sort of one touch between them. And I was like, oh. And that was it. My son from there was besotted. So that's his favourite player straight away. So he just
grew wings and flew away.
It was not, and it's something I never want to take for granted because it's such a privileged position that I'm lucky to have. And I'm kind of trying to drill it into him now. It's like, do you know how lucky you are? It's one of those.
We don't all grow up among football players.
I know, and that's the thing. I just never want that to be taken for granted and to be sort of misconceived because it's a very lucky position to be in. But it was it brought a lump to the throat. I'll say that much. But I mean, there was a couple of others. You're talking about people that were sort of shy off camera, or should I say, shy on camera. Or I remember Michael Essien, just so vibrant and just so you'd shout down the corridor at you, and then as soon as the camera was on, he'd be. Speak up.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. So don't give me that shy and innocent act now.
Well, you used to see him and Obi Mikel and Drogba in the locker room just tearing it up, and then the minute they got in front of camera, it was like, oh.